Alright, hello, welcome to another video. I'm sorry for leaving you guys for so long without a video and for leaving you in the dark about it. My Discord kinda knows what was going on in the background, but I'm gonna let you know that my dog was castrated recently and I had to take care of her as I was living alone in my house because everyone else was on a vacation, and I basically had to babysit her for the past 2 weeks essentially, because she was in a lot of pain, she had a lot of issues, and now the stitches are finally off and she's feeling better. Aside from that, today we're gonna talk about a bit of what's happening through everything Warframe related and balance related and the Pablo tweet and all that, because a lot of people have been giving their inputs and I want to give out mine, and also explain the post that I made recently that, you know, got a lot of attention and a lot of people were pretty talkative about it, and I wanted to go through a lot of points that people made and kind of clear up some confusion that people may have got through that post about me. And just to clarify, I will be doing this while in the background we're gonna have some footage of the Wisp shock mode build with Jade Stars before its nerf. The Jade Stars nerf has been announced, and the original video about this build will get a tag as nerfed over fixed. I will probably put fixed because it probably won't be as good as Roar anymore since it doesn't ignore LOS. But through this video you will see probably why Jade Stars is getting its LOS nerf, and I'm pretty hopeful that instead of just nerfing its LOS, it will also get a small damage boost or a small buff. Maybe like the radius, the explosion radius get increased, or like, I don't know, something like that, because the ability on its own and on Sirius and Orion specifically is not very powerful, but as subsumed, it was powerful for only a specific number of builds that were pretty disruptive in gameplay, and you will see why. But hopefully this ability gets a buff in compensation for getting LOS checks, because without those LOS checks it won't be very good, if I do say so myself. So while doing this, I'm not sure why I'm on this fashion, but yeah, while doing this we will be constantly looking at comments in general through my second screen, and I'm gonna be bringing up points about stuff that have to do with all the balance, all the EDA and EDA discussions, and all that good stuff, basically. While also getting some pretty nice relics potentially. Hopefully there will be some defense missions very soon, so we can just do that. Hopefully, maybe there is one over here already. Oh, with Morse, but could do that for starters. But yeah, let's begin. So, to begin with, I want to say that I am 100% not your enemy. I'm not trying to ruin the game. I'm not trying to get D to just nerf the shit out of everyone and just make you less powerful, make you have less fun in the game. I am not trying to do that. I obviously like this game. I like it a lot, and this is why I'm so passionate about posts like this. And I'm gonna like lower the volume of the game a bit so you can hear me better. But in general, it's really important that there is a decent balance in any game that you play, regardless of if it's PvP or PvE. And it doesn't have to be balanced in the sense that, you know, everything is powerful or something like that, but it has to be balanced in the sense that you can actually have metas and you can cycle through metas to keep the game interesting. It's what many PvE games have been doing, and many successful PvE games have been doing to keep the games fresh. And if you look at something like Diablo, for example, who has been a running game for years and years and years now, and it's way bigger than Warframe, you will notice that Diablo has a thing called seasons, where every season they introduce new sets, they tweak already existing sets, and they shake up the meta to make, you know, new things powerful, other sets less powerful, and then in general just try to change the meta a bit to get people to try out new things, nerfing the strong ones while also giving away new tools for players to play with and have fun. And that's kind of the healthy approach to this whole thing. Like, this is why Riven dispositions were a thing in this game, and this is also how Riven dispositions were affecting a lot of the meta weapons back in the day, because in case you guys don't know, the way Riven mods used to work is that they would change and get buffed or nerfed depending on usage rates and how powerful the weapons were. But we would also, every time we got a new prime weapon or a new weapon, the Riven disposition didn't start from a 0.5. If it was a prime weapon, it would get the exact same disposition as its regular variant, which was extremely broken in some cases. And if it was a new weapon completely, I believe its disposition would start at 1.0, like exactly at the middle, and then they would go about their way of nerfing it or buffing it from there, basically. The rule has been changed, and nowadays the rule is that every new weapon, regardless if it's a prime or not, will start at 0.5 disposition. And generally, weapons cannot be nerfed or buffed anymore at all, ever. It's impossible for weapons to be nerfed or buffed. And in general, that is not a very good or healthy thing, in my opinion. Like, that is... Because if some weapons become powerful through either encounter mode or, you know, we get some kind of augment on a weapon that's already powerful, then if the Riven disposition for that weapon is already high, then that weapon will stay meta for pretty much forever because of that Riven disposition. And we have seen it on a lot of weapons like the Turret, the Magistar, the Oticore, and the list goes on if you want to keep going. But you get what I mean. Now for the actual argument when it comes to Hildryn, the nerfs, and EDA changes. So, Hildryn is actually an incredibly powerful Warframe. Hildryn is in fact within the top 3 most powerful Warframes in the game, in my opinion, at the moment. And it kinda happened gradually, but there was one change specifically late last year that pushed her over the edge, and that is with the release of the old Peace update. We got Arcane Expertise, and Arcane that gives you percentage-based shields depending on your Warframe's ability strength. Now, this Arcane obviously was catered to some Warframes to give them better survivability through shield gaining and all that stuff, and gaining more maximum shields and pairing it with Arcane Ages. And I think when the Arcane was made, that was its original purpose. However, for Hildryn specifically, this Arcane completely breaks her for 2 reasons. One of the reasons is that her energy is based on her shields. So essentially what this Arcane is doing is giving her a ton of energy, like a ridiculous amount of energy without losing energy. Because normally, if you build something like Blind Rage or if you build something like crazy ability strengths, you would want to counteract that with some type of energy regeneration, such as Equilibrium or Prime Flow, or both of them, ideally, you know, and have something else. With Hildryn, you don't need to do that. You can just build strength and keep going, which is extremely powerful. And outside from that, you also get the Aegis Gale augment. Now, here is where things completely break. For starters, obviously Hildryn will gain more damage to everything inside her kit by just building ability strength, but Aegis Gale puts that a bit further by making your Outfire from the first ability to deal more base damage depending on your maximum shields. 15% of your maximum shields are added as base damage. So, you know, that was kind of the nail in the coffin that made Hildryn Omega overpowered, but it all started with secondary Enervate and, you know, Arcanes being able to be equipped in exalted weapons. Then we got the Hildryn update where they kind of tweaked her and allowed her to start using abilities onto her Aegis Storm, her 4th ability. It also introduced the Aegis Gale as an augment there. You know, we got that, we got Enervate that fixed the crit chance issues he had. We also got like a lot of other tweaks. And finally, with Arcane Expertise at late 2025, Hildryn finally broke and became an absolute monster of a character. Like literally top 3 burst characters in the game, and it's not even close. She is easily out of like if you think the most broken characters in the game, she kind of does everything, because like she kills everyone so quickly that she doesn't really need any help from anyone, which is extremely powerful. So yeah, this is why Hildryn is very powerful. This is why Hildryn is picked in Elite Deep Archimedia and Elite Temporal Archimedia, alongside the many other reasons, of course, for ignoring all the modifiers. She is just an extremely safe and powerful Warframe, and she can never really die, and she has easy access to damage while being able to shoot that damage through walls without ever being in danger, while completely ignoring half of the game mode's modifiers. Now, ignoring half of the game mode's modifiers was already a thing for Hildryn. This didn't change with the old peace update, and it didn't actually happen like from either her reworks or anything. This was always the case. The issue started because, you know, Hildryn actually became a really strong Warframe. Before the old peace update, Hildryn didn't actually have a really high play rate on EDA and ETA. It was actually Dante. And, you know, obviously, that's when the issue with Elite Deep and Elite Temporary Media starts. The only way that people want to play these game modes is by trying to negate as many modifiers as possible, because all the modifiers are is annoyances that you get inside your mission and not actual things that, you know, threaten you. Basically, it just makes the mission more annoying and more tedious to go through. So people simply don't want that, and I completely agree. I don't like EDA or temporal media as game modes, and I do think they will need to be tweaked and become better as game modes, and maybe even something that isn't more artificial difficulty, but it's actual difficulty through, you know, having the enemies deal more damage to you if specific condition is met, or if the player is very inactive. Something like that could be very, very good for that game mode, and in general have a lot better reception from the community. And especially the way now that they will make, you know, the points be gathered more if you pick the correct Warframe. They low-key need to put more emphasis on that and have specific, let's say, those specific debuffs you pick. Some of them are diabolical, like transference. Not having operator is one of the worst ones. Whenever I see it, I never pick it. I cannot play without my operator. It's such an important part and mechanic of the game that without operator, I completely feel like I feel volatile. It's just really, really bad. And you have some other ones like dull blades, where it's like 50% less combo gain on swords, and it's like what the hell? How are these even comparable? They both cost the same thing, you know? So I feel like if you get, oh my god. Okay, interesting. Anyways, I feel like if you get some different debuffs from the missions, different debuffs should account for more or less points depending on which you pick, and that would, you know, change the game mode a lot for the better, because then people can ignore the really difficult modifier but pick everything else. Or they can pick the most difficult modifier but not have to pick anything else but that difficult modifier in comparison, you know? So you have a lot more choice and player choice, and people can play around the more difficult modifier if they have it. Like, for example, if they decide to return the modifier that is like, your Warframe cannot have shields, then great, you can pick that modifier and suddenly we can play something like Nidus if it's available, and that modifier doesn't even matter and you get 3 points from it, which I think is a creative way to encourage player choice and let them pick more Warframes. It's not like a bad choice. I know it makes the game mode way easier if you do get that combination, because basically you don't have any downside to playing the mission. But it's definitely something to get people to play other frames and enjoy the game more onto those missions without making it tedious for them. So I think it's a good step in the right direction. But yeah, outside from that, there is quite a few Warframes that are extremely powerful right now and disruptive. And they are powerful and disruptive for reasons that a lot of people may not know. Like, a lot of people asked me, oh, what is so disruptive about Gara, about Sight, and Siren is right there and she's way more disruptive, and yada yada yada. Alright, let's get things from the start. So, why Sight is disruptive? Sight 09, when compared with shotguns in general, and it's not just Sobek, it's literally any auto shotgun in the game. It can be Strong, it can be the Boar Prime, which is another very popular choice, and it can be the Sobek. Like, any fully automatic shotgun in the game, when paired with Sight, is extremely, extremely powerful. like ridiculously powerful. And it is simply because when you add a bit of inaccuracy to those shotguns, shooting at the general direction of the enemies will simply hit them pretty much any time. And this basically gives you soft aim mode, essentially. With the amount of pellets and a guaranteed status procs on all those pellets and the amount of damage gained by purple shards on Side 09, you can easily pick a shotgun with basically no mods except Shotgun Elementalist and the Inaccuracy mod, and you could easily kill everyone in a base steel path mission pretty much instantly as long as you aim at the general direction. You don't have to hit them anymore because of the inaccuracy. The inaccuracy will hit them for you, and then you start just killing everyone through walls for the entire mission without ever interacting with the enemies to begin with. You don't even need evade at that point, you can just play the game, but obviously you do have evade, and you also have the ability to put Nourish onto your weapon whenever you want, because Nourish doesn't count like Roar, Zada's Whisper and the rest, and it provides free viral procs to your weapon and viral damage, even though your weapon has like Tides Elemental ammo, which, you know, it just gives you guaranteed procs, so you don't even ruin the waiting, it doesn't matter because you're getting the guaranteed procs anyway. It's pretty ridiculous, and in general, Side is a insanely popular Warframe with or without the Kuva Sobek. But with the Kuva Sobek, it gets ridiculous. You can get upwards of 500 or even 600 kills per minute, which is something that shouldn't even exist in Warframe. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. It dilutes enemy spawns. It is that strong that enemies are spawning too far away from the player, because similar to this build and how this build works, and whenever you have a good tile set, the enemies, or you check the EE.log, and there's a bunch of lines of the script not being able to spawn the enemies because it detects that the enemies spawn in an area where they will die pretty much instantly. So it delays the enemy spawns and tries to spawn them on a different position, right? That is how disruptive some of the builds are, basically, that we have. And yeah, in general, I think that, oh shit, I think that Sides, then Hildryn, obviously, because she has no line of sight checks, nothing can really touch her because she is in the air, and enemies have hard times hitting like Warframes that are airborne, and then also she has Pillage that basically puts her at max shield all the time. Just a lot of things that make Hildryn extremely powerful in general, and you know, you just can't really ignore it. And at some point, I think these things need some type of nerf to become a bit more balanced, because Hildryn wasn't always this powerful. Hildryn became this powerful, remember, because of the OPs. A lot of people also say that, you know, I don't really see them in my missions very often, so I don't think they're a problem. And a lot of other people say that, oh, Hildryn on the 2025 usage rate is in a really low percentage, so it definitely isn't a problem that she's high play rate in EDA and ETA. Alright, so let's get the second part of the argument out first. Hildryn is not in high percentage usage in the 2025 year in review, and that doesn't make her a problem because she has high percentage on EDA, ETA, but not in there. I want you to ask yourself, why do you think Hildryn doesn't have a high percentage play rate outside of EDA, ETA? According to you, at least, and according to those stats, right? Those stats are for everything that happened during 2025, okay? Remember that. When did Hildryn break as a Warframe? When did she become this powerful? What changed? Well, when the old piece came out, we got Arcane Expertise, and with Arcane Expertise, Hildryn completely broke and started one-shotting everything, correct? Correct. When did the old piece come out? If I do a simple Google search, and I type Warframe the old piece, release date, I will see that it was released on December 10th, 2025, which means that the data you have for Hildryn in the 2025 year in review for how strong she is basically not affected by this arcane whatsoever and its introduction, which makes Hildryn not a very popular frame at the time. She wasn't that good. Let's be real. She was a decent Warframe, she was workable, but she didn't deal nearly as much damage, she didn't have nearly as much survivability or energy due to arcane expertise, and she just wasn't that strong. So of course, her play rate is gonna be lower. I bet in the 2026 play rate, we will see an increase on Hildryn usage by like 300%. Easily. Easily like 300%. I'm not sure if she's gonna be in the top 5 most used, although I do expect her to be in the top 5 most used after seeing the graph for EDA and ETA, because obviously if people pick her on EDA and ETA, they will pick her elsewhere as well. She's not like only useful in that game mode. That's not a thing. It's not a thing. Wukong is useful on that game mode and outside that game mode. Dante is useful in that game mode and outside that game mode. The same goes for every Warframe that is played in EDA and ETA. It's not suddenly, oh, they're only good for this and it's like their niche or something. EDA and ETA are still just regular Warframe with modifiers. Some Warframes are just better at ignoring those modifiers, and that's about it. Hildryn is one of them, for sure. Probably the best one at that. But that doesn't make Hildryn less powerful in the actual game. Hildryn is freaking broken. Hildryn is insanely strong right now. So, yes, I do think Hildryn needs a nerf. And I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. It's not crazy whatsoever. Hildryn has a like 20-meter AoE nuke without line of sight checks while floating over the ground, CCing everyone, armor stripping everyone, replenishing her shields, and just absolutely destroying anything in her path. Like, the Warframe needs a nerf. It's too powerful. It's simply too powerful. There is nothing about it that is like normal. Outer Terminus? I don't know about Outer Terminus. I'm just gonna do like a survival until there, I guess. Yeah, she's just too strong. There's nothing else to it. And I don't think it's a bad thing that we have strong Warframes, but I do think it's a bad thing that we have Warframes that much stronger than weak Warframes, and the Warframes that are that much stronger completely invalidate what you do in the game. Right now, if you pick a good setup or a Warframe that is really strong, you can easily go ahead and cut your damage in half or even more, and you will feel no difference in the actual gameplay because you're still one-shotting everybody. That is the problem, and that is why nerfs should come in this game. Enemies getting buffed doesn't fix anything, by the way. Enemies getting buffed comes back to the simple argument that you constantly see on Twitter, where you want to play a game and you go to the higher difficulty, and the higher difficulty is just, oh, we increase the health and damage dealt from the enemies, and that's it, basically. Like, nothing changed. We didn't introduce anything else, any other mechanics. The enemies just deal more damage to you and they're more healthy. And that doesn't really fix shit. Like, you can easily put trillions of health onto enemies and we still have a million ways to kill them. And even if you go too ridiculous and go to quadrillions of health, then we simply have Warframes that, guess what, they can deal % max health damage through their abilities. So this still doesn't fix anything, it just dilutes the meta to a different Warframe. Like, if you did that, Sevagoth would be the most peak frame because his nuke just works for anything. He would just nuke everyone with no LOS checks in a 30-meter radius and kill them in pretty much one press of his first ability. Because guess what? His first ability deals % max health. It's that simple. There's nothing really that you can actually do to make this to keep the Warframes like being this powerful, and doing something to the enemies to make them more interactive with how powerful Warframes are at the moment. The only way you would do it is through damage attenuation, which is a way to say basically, fuck you to your build, we are gonna limit your damage because you are too powerful because we said so. And sure, for bosses that can work, and especially some bosses that you have to respect their mechanics and all that. But doing this for every enemy is not the way. Like we saw this from the Noko update when disruption targets got the new damage attenuation. Nobody was happy, me included. I hated it, and there were a lot of people upset by the whole changes through damage attenuation, and that update in general was just a complete disaster. I'm gonna be so for real. And that update, even after they removed damage attenuation from all those things, it did still ruin quite a few game modes because of that. Disruption took the biggest hit, and disruption is, you know, no longer just the place to go and test out weapons, because the disruption targets, especially on demos, they just fall over and die. It's so easy to kill them. It's actually pathetic. So yeah, I don't think touching and buffing the enemies changes anything. I think alongside reworks, buffs, and quality of life changes that need to happen to a lot of Warframes, because again, this game has a lot of issues with balance on both ways, we should also get nerfs on the extremely powerful things. We really do. Because even if we nerf them, they will still be extremely powerful and really good. What the fuck? Okay. Nothing will actually change. If you guys are interested, and if you have made it to this video so far, just know that on my Discord server, which you can find the link below, I have a chat in that Discord server, which let me check how it's called. It's called Moog Balance Patch Ideas. In that chat, I have some pinned messages where there is a website to create your own mods, and we also have a balance patch Google document that is written and basically provided by me and my own community, and you guys can get in there and check out my ideas and balance things and all that. And I can give you a few examples of things that I've done so far, like radiation damage got buffed, viral damage got nerfed, enemy body parts got reworked a bit to make it so that if you hit the hand of an enemy or the foot of an enemy, you deal less damage. But if you deal the head of an enemy, you can actually deal more damage with like anything, even AoE weapons now. And you know, just in general, a more rewarding playground for actually being creative. There is also something I called Ultima Augments, where it's an augment that works for every single ability of your Warframe. So like, let's say if you have an augment for one of your Warframes, I could probably go ahead and read one. Low-key, wait, let me go to one. So obviously this version of the game would be nerfed a lot in terms of like what actually happens to each Warframe. They will all get nerfed by a bit, but to compensate, you would obviously get a lot more powerful, or you don't even need to get more powerful in some Warframes, but some Warframes that would get nerfed on their base kit to be, you know, less disruptive would get more tools to play with through other means, or buffed through some other abilities they have, basically. So you could keep going and get some really cool niche ideas from that. But let's go, for example, on a Warframe that I feel like is disruptive a lot, and a lot of other people agree with me, which is Gara. So Gara, what I did, for example, on this document was that I buffed her passive to have a better blind percentage, basically, and have it blind pretty much consistently. The first ability was nerfed in damage, but the bug fix for casting, which would move the hitbox, would be fixed. The second ability was nerfed in its damage over time calculation. Instead of doing damage every second, it would be every 2.5 seconds per enemy. So obviously the first tick you do on an enemy will still just tick instantly, just the next tick will take 2.5 seconds to tick again, which is a pretty fair nerf considering Gara has infinite scaling. And to compensate for that, if you would touch a nullifier, the stacks would go down by 20% a second, instead of completely losing it, and, you know, falling out of bounds, it would still lose the stacks completely. The third ability would count towards Arcane Sculpture. The fourth ability would get an explosion damage multiplier when being broken from Shattered Glass to 1.3 times. And that would be to compensate for the small nerf to Shattered Glass, and pretty much make it so that the explosion for the fourth ability would still deal decent enough damage to kill enemies, but not completely destroy them. like on repeat, which is what it does right now. And finally, explosion radius of the fourth ability reduced by 3 meters at base, because it has no line of sight checks, and it just hits enemies and one-shots them within a 70-meter radius, which is absolutely cracked. Like, it's completely crazy. So now that the nerfs are in, we can now make our Ultima Augment. So this is what Ultima Augments are. Ultima Augments are a way to basically not counter, but give an alternative to the helmet system. Basically, currently, a lot of people, when they first get a Warframe, they look at which ability that Warframe has the least use of, and then they subsume that ability and put something powerful in there, like Roar, Nourish, Zada's Whisper, etc., right? The Ultima Augment would be a alternative to that by giving you a lot more powerful abilities in general, and just buffing the hell out of every ability of your kits through one augment mode. But to use that augment mode, you would have to not be able to use any other augments onto your Warframe, and you would also need to not have it subsumed. You would have to have all 4 of your abilities onto the kit. So for Gara, this is what it did. Sarded Last now performs a 3-hit combo at 40% damage. Splinter Storm, which that was her 1 by the way. Splinter Storm, that is her 2, now decays by 50 damage per second, but it cannot be lost by any means. And then third ability, casting Spectral Rage during the 4th ability will put the mirrors on top of the wall, so you can basically get more health onto the mirrors, and they will work for people that are outside of the wall as well, so they don't have to walk inside or start destroying the wall gets more tanky. And finally, for Mass Vitrify, which is the wall, it would have 300% more health, so it would withstand more damage. And also, instead of breaking it in 1 hit, you would break it in 3 hits, so it can account for the 3-hit combo of your first ability that is provided to that augment. Now, one thing is, obviously, the 3-hit combo, you hear 40% damage, but that's not exactly true, because that damage scales with strength and would be capped at 100%. So once you reach 250% strength, you would get a 3-hit combo that deals 300% of the original damage, and that damage also scales with strength, so you will just get 3 times your damage as long as you reach the strength threshold. Then the really interesting thing, in my opinion, would be the second ability, which means that if you can maintain the stacks onto any of your allies somehow, like if you are playing a coordinated squad and you have your allies close enough so they can be touched by the 4th ability and then they explode from it and gain the stacks for your 2, they would keep the stacks of Gara's 2 and her second ability pretty much forever without Gara having to recast it onto them, so long as the damage is just there and not run out, you know? Which is a really cool idea, because it could provide your entire team with 90% damage reduction, and it could provide you, the Gara player, with infinite scaling. And this is where, you know, the big power from this Ultima Augment comes. And obviously, you know, the triple strike on Mass Vitrify that deals like the explosion 3 times, that would also be cool. But you get what I mean. Like, this augment would have to be powerful, because Nourish on Gara is extremely powerful and makes her really broken, especially now that we have Arcane Sculpture, and Arcane Sculpture already procs on her 4th ability and all that. Like, that is all extremely powerful. And this is also why I said Gara is a very broken and disruptive Warframe right now. She basically doesn't really need to do anything. Like, she is in a state where she can easily build for expertise in sculpture and have melee retaliation on her Sarded Last to gain the max damage, because it actually provides more damage to the weapon than melee exposure. And that would boost the damage onto your 4th ability, and with that extra damage onto your 4th ability, you would get some pretty incredible results by just, you know, basically doing nothing. Pressing 4 and 1 on repeat while having your 2 up, and just killing everyone on a tile set in a 70-meter radius, making her like literally the best Warframe in defense missions. Like, Her speed in defense missions would be pretty much the same or even better than Side 09's, because all she does is just jump up in the air a bit, press 4 again to deactivate it, and then press 1, kill the wall, and the wall literally kills everyone instantly without, you know, any interaction between the Warframe and the enemies. And that is where the disruptiveness of Gara comes in, for people that were wondering. Siren is not as disruptive because her abilities inherently, even though they hit things through walls, they don't really do enough damage to absolutely one-shot everyone through said walls, and that makes her a bit less disruptive. The disruptive nature of Siren comes directly from Toxic Lash, and it comes through things that synergize with Toxic Lash. Things like Combustion Beam that I've showcased before, that pretty much removes the need to do anything outside of shooting one enemy and waiting for things to happen. And of course the Kuva Sobek, which, you know, is the Kuva Sobek. Acid Cells is a hell of a move, which is why I also mentioned it, that it's pretty disruptive, and at this point, with all the things that have happened and the Elementalist modes and the ways that you can actually put DOTs on Acid Cells and boost its damage to just one-shot everything for you, you know, it has got to a point where the weapon is just a bit too powerful, and that's about it. And, you know, obviously you could nerf things like the Sobek and the more powerful weapons by simply doing Riven disposition stuff, but there will still be some outliers that would be able to completely ignore that. As I said, sides, if you have a Sobek, you can just put Elementalist and the Inaccuracy mode on the Sobek and then Acid Cells, and that would be enough to one-shot pretty much anyone. Like, if you play base Steel Path especially and you start a mission, until you reach like level 300 and the first skill takes a while to get, then nothing really changes. It would only change once the first skill takes like a bit longer to get, which is kind of crazy in my opinion. But yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. I think that's pretty much it. EDA, ETA changes, as I said, I like the direction, but I think we need to emphasize more on the points and be able to give the player like more ways to go over the maximum number of points, like to basically give them player choice and not make the player feel obliged to follow every single one of the debuffs. Like, they could do it for the challenge and you could reward them with something like a funny glyph like you do for all of the super bosses. Like, we can still just do that for something like EDA or ETA, or you could reward them with something else like a bonus. But for players that just want their Archon swords and all of that, and they want to play for these reasons, you should, as a dev, give them more options to ignore modifiers that are straight up annoying or even impossible to play around. That's about it. But yeah, Banshee rework, very cool idea. I really hope it comes out well. We don't know anything about it, so, you know, don't ask me anything about it. I just hope that she keeps the utility of her second and third ability, and her fourth is completely reworked, while her one gets some quality of life stuff, because I do think her one can be cool, but her fourth ability just, you know, it definitely needs some kind of revamp. Like, we need a new fourth ability. Or maybe a new passive that makes the fourth ability good by some, like, rebound passive. I think a rebound passive for Banshee would be absolutely amazing, where abilities could, like, come back to Banshee essentially after being thrown out. Like, that could be really cool, because if you think about it, both her one and her fourth ability go out of Banshee in an area, like they travel, then Banshee could probably recall the abilities and travel back to her to deal like different effects or even more damage. That would be really cool, in my opinion. But yeah, we'll see when the September dev stream comes out, and I think that's in Korea? I don't remember, but yeah, we'll see when the time comes. I'm hopeful for Banshee, for sure. I think the Nidus rework was a great success, and she became an amazing and incredibly strong Warframe, so definitely excited for it. But yeah, outside of that, I think my point hopefully is being made clear here. and I hope you understand my perspective of that. We actually need, alongside buffs to weak warframes or reworks to weak warframes so they feel better to play, we also need nerfs to extremely strong and disruptive things, because they just make the game less fun and the meta stays stagnant. With how long the Torrid, Magistar, Oticore and all of the other stuff have become meta right now, it's just really boring for both people that play the game and try other stuff, but also the people that are starting to play the game, that, you know, somebody tells them, oh, you should try the Torrid out, the Torrid is a great weapon, and then they try the Torrid out, they're like, oh yeah, this is a cool weapon, I'm gonna use it, and then they do Still Path, they max out the weapon, and then they try a different weapon and nothing. I'll go back to the Torrid, this weapon isn't as good as the Torrid. And eventually they get bored of the game and they leave the game. It happens time and time again. And on my Discord, I have around 2,000 almost people, I think, right now. I'm not really sure. And I can tell you that over half of these people do not play Warframe actively anymore and only come back whenever a certain update hits to try it out. And then they go back to a different game. It's sad, but it's true, and that's gonna keep happening unless we try to do more things to shake up the meta and bring more things to the table. And reworks are a good way of shaking up the meta, but nerfs are also a good way to shake up the meta, alongside like buffs to other things, so you can give the player something back instead of just taking away their power for free. One last thing I want to talk about is why people are so scared of nerfs, and why people don't want to see nerfs in their game ever. Let me show you some weapons. I don't know if I even have it anymore. Yeah, because I don't. The secondary variant of this thing. When Fortuna came out, the Catch Moon was an incredible weapon. It was better than every single secondary weapon in the game, period. It wasn't even close. And due to that, it had a over 50% usage from mastery rank 15 and above. It was ridiculous. Everybody used this thing. It was super overpowered. It was basically an Arc of Plasmor, but more powerful and faster. It was something else. So Dee's idea to nerf this weapon was to get it out on a ditch and just shoot it until it's dead. Yeah, they nerfed the shit out of it. They made it borderline abusable. They nerfed its range so much that its damage started decaying after only 9 meters, making it like one of the worst damage decays in the entire game. And the weapon didn't just fall out of existence, it literally died. Like, it's one of the least used weapons in the entire game right now. Exhibit B, we have freaking Kuva Brahma and Kuva Zar and all of the Kuva AoE weapons. So at some point, Wukong was a really disruptive Warframe because his clone could easily one-shot anything without the player needing to do anything. He still kind of does that, but at least the player needs to move around and maybe even, you know, use their melee weapon for the clone to do that. Back then, they didn't. Back then, if you wanted to play Wukong, you just press tier 1, have it up, and then you stood still, and the clone killed everything, and the mission played on its own. No ammo issues, nothing, just the Wukong clone killing absolutely everything. From that, we got a huge nerf to every single AoE weapon and every single Spectre. Some AoE weapons survived and are still really strong, like the Tenet Envoy and the Kuva Ogris, but some beloved AoE weapons like the Kuva Brahma and the Kuva Zar died, like completely died. The Kuva Zar's ammo economy is absolutely abysmal now, and the Kuva Brahma's ammo economy is even worse. The Kuva Brahma has only 5 bullets, it can regain 1 bullet whenever it picks up ammo, and its damage is just not enough to kill someone in a single bullet, so it just runs out of ammo really quickly now. So it's basically unusable. Another exhibit, in general, like back in the day when Warframe nerfed things, the nerfs were so severe that the whole play style would be killed, or the nerfs would come in with an unnecessary amount of like reasoning, like reasoning that basically didn't make sense. For example, Limbo. At some point during Scarlet Spear, Limbo got nerfed on his stasis because he was good at Scarlet Spear specifically. It's basically the example people are putting Hildryn on right now with EDA, ETA, except Hildryn is absolutely goated in every game mode and not this one. But Limbo was really goated in that game mode because his 2 could easily stun NCC sentient enemies forever. For some reason, they thought that that's a bad thing, and they had to remove that part of stasis and make sentients still get stunned by it, but they could at some point break free and just start hitting you while you were in your rift, which is annoying to say the least. And you know, Limbo didn't get other balance changes, but he slowly fell out of the meta because he wasn't really modernized and things just became more about killing things instead of just seeing things. So just not worth it to play Limbo as much anymore in that nature. Although I will agree, Limbo is still a good Warframe and a really powerful Warframe, even if a lot of people will not agree with me here. I used to main Limbo before Wisp and I know how powerful he can be. The same goes for Banshee, by the way. I don't know if you guys heard Pablo say Banshee in good hands is like extremely powerful. He's completely correct. He is 100% correct about that. A lot of people may not agree with Pablo here, but he is a game dev and he probably knows better than you. And as someone who plays Banshee a lot and has made videos about her, I can tell you that she's not just fine, she's extremely powerful when used properly and abusing her mechanics correctly. So I'm really excited for her rework to come to see what her 4th ability will finally be, because it's kind of useless, I'm not gonna lie. Her 2 strong abilities are extremely strong and her 2 bad abilities are really, really bad, like extremely bad. So we'll see what comes out of that. But yeah, in general, you can think of nerfs in Warframe as like a really bad thing, because old-time veterans will tell you that, oh, when things get nerfed in Warframe, they don't just get nerfed, they get killed and all that. And it's not really true. Like, I don't wanna be that guy, but Dante's nerf was 100% justified, and Dante is still an incredibly strong Warframe to this day. Like, there is nothing bad about Dante right now and what has happened to him. He is absolutely incredible. Like, he is literally top 5 best Warframes in the game, and his stats show that. But you know what's kinda annoying to me? The annoying part to me is that when I made the Wukong short, I showcased that, you know, the whole Kuva Brahma and how he hates this weapon and whatever. People in the comments hate this weapon as well, like a lot, because they were active during that meta and they were like, oh, the Kuva Brahma, it's like so powerful and all that, and it's like it was just way too powerful and you would see it on every mission and yada yada yada, and it's like, okay, I agree to an extent, but we're not seeing the full story here. Like, we're really not seeing the full story here, you know. And I will tell you the full story, like if you give me a small moment. Oh yeah, also a lot of people are like, they are really surprised that we had they were like, oh wait, what is the Tenant Envoy doing as the weapon with the most kills? I never see this weapon being played. And it's like, yeah, we just ignore that because we just don't see the Envoy ever. But you know, it's whatever. It is okay. It is absolutely fine. Don't worry about it. Anyways, where is the top 10 primaries of... Okay, top 10 primaries 2021. Kuva Brahma is at 6.10%. I think it was 2023 that had the big Kuva Brahma thing. Kuvas are 11% on 2022, Kuva Brahma 5.5%. At some point, I remember the Kuva Brahma was like at like really high percentage, basically. Oh, here we go. Okay, I can check it here. So, Kuva Brahma. So if I go to 2020, it's at 8.3%. If I go to 2021, it's at 6.10%. If I go to 2022, it's at 5.5, 2.3 at 2023 when the nerfs happen, and then it just falls off a cliff, basically. It's now at 0.84%. So people were saying we would see the Kuva Brahma everywhere and all that, but how can you say this when the weapon never reached like anywhere close to what the Torrid is being used right now? The Torrid is close to 10% usage, and last year it was at 8.5% usage, so like, what the hell? You know, like, the Torrid has been dominant for 2 years straight, and Brahma's domination only lasted like half a year, basically. It's nothing changed. Kuva Brahma, 2020, 8.32%. And then the next year it's 6, the next year is 5, the next year is 2. Alright? Torrid. You go to Torrid and it's like 2024, 8.3%. 2025, 9.6%, and if nothing changes, 2026, we're gonna have that shit be over 10%, and I guarantee you that. Thankfully, there were a lot of weapons on the primary weapon category that are very, very strong, but it's like the Torrid and Magister usage is a bit insane. And I know a lot of people will say, oh, but Magister is not the most used weapon out of the melee category in 2025, it was the Broken War, and that's actually not true. If you check, the Broken War has 5.42%, and the Magister has 3.06%, while the Sanctum Magister, which is basically the same weapon, has 2.52%. And if you add both of these up, because it's the same weapon, you will get a 5.58% usage, which is higher than Broken War's 5.42% usage. And this was after the slam nerf, so it doesn't really change anything. And obviously, like, if you go to the heat map per mastery rank, you will see like at MR20 Torrid has like a 13% usage, and yeah, it just gradually goes down by a bit. But like, even all the way to LR6, the usage doesn't fall down below 10%. The only reason Torrid doesn't have a higher usage than it is now is because early mastery rank players just don't play this weapon because they don't have the encounter of it yet. The moment they get the encounter, they basically only play this weapon. This is why. So yeah, don't be surprised next year if Hildryn is high on the list, and we need to really stop coping, and we really need to start accepting nerfs, because just like reworks and buffs are good things, so are nerfs, and that's what I meant by my comment. Thank you very much for watching another video of mine. Sorry for this yap session, and if it bored you, I will see you on the next one.